Hello, welcome to my tutorial on how to sync Pro Tools 11 and Logic X on Mavericks. In this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to sync audio MIDI between the two programs. I'm using Pro Tools and Logic as examples, but this should work on any combination of DAWs. The first thing you need to do is download Soundflower. It's free, you can get it from their official site here. It does have some limitations, as it can only have 2 or 64 channels of audio, not somewhere in between. The 64 channel driver can cause some problems in Pro Tools, and we need more than 2 channels. So a solution is to use a modded version on this site. It lets you have anywhere between 2 and 20 channels over 64. This is what I'll be using for this tutorial. When you've downloaded and installed Soundflower, you might have to restart your computer. Once you've done that, you can move on to the next step. The next thing you need to do is load up your audio MIDI setup. When that is loaded, you need to make 2 aggregate devices. You can make one by clicking the plus at the bottom of the window and choosing Create Aggregate Device. Your first aggregate device is for Pro Tools, so make sure you have all your standard inputs and outputs selected, and also as many Soundflower channels as you want to have. These act as send and return between the DAWs. One thing you have to look out for is you need to leave 2 Soundflower channels for Logic to use. You then choose your clock source and sample rate. I tend to use first Soundflower as the source. Remember, for both aggregate devices, your Pro Tools session and Logic session, the sample rate needs to be the same. The second aggregate device is the Logic. This doesn't need your standard inputs and outputs selected, but it does need all the Soundflower channels you used for the first device and the 2 that I told you not to include. Also, remember to match the clock source and sample rate to the first device. Now you've done that, you need to load up a Logic session and add 2 audio tracks. Then go to Preferences, then Audio. Make sure your input and output device is the aggregate device you created for Logic. Then, go to I/O assignments, and for your output, make sure the 2 channels that are not in your Pro Tools device are selected. Now, for your first track, make sure your input is input 1 and your output is output 3 and 4. For your second track, make sure it is a stereo input and you have selected 5 and 6 for that. Then, the output should be 7 and 8. Now, make sure both the tracks are monitoring enabled and head into Pro Tools. When you're there, make a new session and go to Setup, then Playback Engine. This should be set to your Pro Tools aggregate device. Then, go to Setup, I/O, and make sure you have all your inputs and outputs that you have selected in your aggregate device. If you don't see the input or output listed, click Default and it will add them. Now, go to Setup again and click Session, and make sure your sample rate is the same as your aggregate device. Then, go into Logic and check it there. To do this, go to File, Project Settings, Audio. Go back to Pro Tools and record some audio in. Testing 1 2 3, testing 1 2 3 3, testing. After that, make sure you have 2 aux tracks. Then, set the output on the audio track to your 5 and 6 Soundflower channels. On the aux channels, set the outputs to your normal output and the inputs to 3/4 on aux 1 and 7/8 on aux 2. This corresponds with the Logic sends. Now, in your mixer, create a new send on your audio track to your first Soundflower channel. Setting up all this means your dry signal will be sent to Logic from Soundflower 5/6 and returned on channel 7 and 8. Another signal is then sent from channel 1, returning on channels 3 and 4. This can be used as an effects send so you can mix the dry and wet signal. This is dry. Testing 1 2 3, testing 1 2 3. If I loop that and go into Logic, you can see the meters move. Testing 1 2 3, testing 1 2 3 3, testing. Testing 1 2 3, testing 1 2 3. Now, if I turn up the aux 1 send, testing. Testing 1 2 3, testing 1 2 3. Then go back into Logic testing. And add an effect to the aux 1 channel. Testing 1 2 3, testing 1 2 3 3, testing. Testing 1 2 3, testing 1 2 3. You can see it comes back through Pro Tools. Now the audio is linked, we can look at syncing the program so when you play in Pro Tools, it will play in Logic. To do this, we need to go into Audio MIDI Setup, and show the MIDI window. Make sure you have your AAC driver active and make sure you have a bus that you are not using. I made one called MTC for this. Now, go back into Pro Tools and go to Setup, then Peripherals. Then, under Synchronization, make sure the MTC generator port is set to the bus you just created. Now, go into Setup again and click Session. Make a note of the session start time and timecode frame rates. Now go into Logic, right-click the control bar and customize control bar. Make sure Sync is ticked, then you'll be able to see this in the control bar. Click it, then right-click it. Make sure it is Sync to Sync, then click Synchronization Settings and check that these match your Pro Tools settings from earlier. Now, in Pro Tools, right-click in your control bar and make sure Synchronization is ticked. Then, click the MTC button. Now our sessions are synced, so when you press play in Pro Tools, it plays in Logic.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3 3. Testing.
The next thing we need to do is get audio from a MIDI instrument in Logic to play in time in Pro Tools. To do this, we go in Logic and create a new software instrument. Then choose its outputs. They need to be an output we haven't used yet, so I'm using 9 and 10. We're then going to create a new MIDI region and add some notes to it. Then in Pro Tools, we create a new stereo aux track and set its inputs to 9 and 10. Now, when I play the track in Pro Tools, you can hear the MIDI. Now, to make Logic play MIDI from Pro Tools, we need to first get rid of the MIDI that was in Logic. Then, we go back to the audio MIDI setup and add another IAC bus. Mine is called bus 1. Then we go back to Pro Tools and create a new MIDI track. As we have the notes, you can see it's playing back. If it doesn't, make sure the MIDI output is set to channel 1 of the new IAC bus. To prove this is working fully, I'm just going to change the sound in Logic. And you can see, it now plays the new sound. That's it. Now you know how to sync Pro Tools and Logic on Mavericks. Any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll try to answer them. Thank you for watching.